وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع أيها المبعوث فينا جئت بالأمر المطاع جئت شرفت المدينة مرحبا يا خير داع. His eyes slowly rising, sunrise warms the horizon, sand dunes form in the distance, he's up and out in an instant. The crowd, they all were waiting, watching and anticipating. A man appears from afar, could it be the one sent by Allah? He shouts, here comes the prophet, his face is a light that drives out the darkness. Words are alive, his message is living, pure everywhere our voices.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of The Y Factor. Today is Thursday the 28th of March and we're here for another live Y Factor episode.
He steps and reaches to touch.
Alright, you've got Tasnim here on the mic, joined by
Zeynab.
Okay, now we're here to actually discuss some really important features today. We're going to be discussing the protests at Sydney Uni, so for all you Sydney Uni peeps, old and new, that would be something definitely to tune into and see what's happening there. We'll also be discussing the controversy around Femen's
Tunisia protests. So that's in
right.
international news. We'll be discussing feminism and all things related to that.
That's right. And we'll also be having a chat to Sheikh Yahya Ibrahim in relation to the Twins of Faith conference coming up. So all that and more you'll be listening on the Y Factor this episode. So tune in. You're listening to the Y Factor on 87.6 FM.
This is Omar Regan, and you're listening to Y Factor.
The Y Factor, an amazing radio station. If you're not listening to the Y Factor, you're probably not doing much.
I think the likes of Alan Jones and Ray Hadley are sort of keeping a close eye on you guys.
This is the segment to listen to. There's nothing better than this. It beats anything else.
Yeah, man, if you don't listen to the Y Factor, you are a bloody fool.
Y Factor Radio, the best radio station in Australia.
The Y Factor.
That's right. So you heard what they had to say about our show. So we're back on now. Now, this is a live episode. So at any time, if you are interested in calling in, the number is 9758 3399. That was 9758 3399. Now, let's take it away with the news for this week, Zainab.
Okay, so in international news, the Syria situation is ongoing, and now we have an inquiry into the use of chemical weapons in Syria. So the Secretary General of the UN has appointed Professor Erik Sellström of Sweden to head the UN fact-finding mission, which will investigate allegations of the reported use of chemical weapons in Syria. So Mr. Sellström, he's currently managing a project in Sweden called European Centre for Advanced Studies of Societal Security and Vulnerability, in particular major incidents, wow, this is a long title, with chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear and explosive substances. And also in Syrian news, the Saudi Interior Ministry spokesman has warned Saudis fighting in Syria that they will be arrested when they return home. So they've been told that involvement in the Syrian crisis is against Saudi laws. So that should be a big deterrent for any Saudi citizen thinking of joining up the fighting there.
Well, that's interesting because, I mean, the politics of the region is pretty up and down lately. You know, you've had, kind of some of the rebel movements declare terrorist organisations by countries including Australia.
Yeah, I mean, that just happened last week with Bob Carr.
That's right. So it's actually interesting to keep an eye on the developments for Syria. But more in the region, in Algeria, Libyan officials are actually trying to locate Muammar Gaddafi's wife and 3 of his children who are missing from their refugee neighbouring Algeria. Now, they were there, his wife Safiya and his sons Hannibal and Mohammed, and they went to Algeria, obviously after, their father was removed, and they fled there in 2011. So they've actually been missing, and they've been looking for them since. I wonder where they're hiding.
Yeah, it's interesting because who was the other regime? I was just reading about it. The other North African regime where there were people deposed, apparently they'd found sanctuary in Oman. So people are popping up all over the place after being deposed from power in Arab Spring.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that Aisha, who is
who is Gaddafi's daughter.
Yeah, that's right. She has an Israeli lawyer called Nick Kaufman, and he said he won't comment on the report of their flight, but said that he was representing her in efforts to get the International Criminal Court to investigate the killing of her father. And he said, I was indeed retained by Aisha Gaddafi for one discrete issue, namely seeking the opening of an investigation at the ICC into the murder of Muammar Gaddafi. So although he's gone, his news is still with us, and these are the members of his family.
So moving away from the Arab region and into the UK, in news, political news from the UK, the Labour leader Ed Miliband has said that British politics will be a poorer place without his brother David, who has confirmed he's stepping down as an MP to run the International Rescue Committee. So the Milibands are obviously a powerful political family, but now David's leaving British politics because he wishes to repay a personal debt from his own family history. Now, he was the former Foreign Secretary, and his brother Ed Miliband has said that he knows that it was such a hard decision for his brother to leave British politics, but that he's very enthusiastic about taking up this position at the International Rescue Committee. So, I mean, on the one hand, they're brothers, so obviously he's going to say that he's made a valuable contribution.
To leave politics and join a charity. I mean, I wonder if he's redeeming his soul after all those years.
Oh, who knows, Tasnim, or maybe he just couldn't hack it. You know, it's a tough world in British politics, or any politics for that matter.
Well, as we all know, Barack Obama was in town, actually by in town I mean in the Middle East last week, and he had a 4-day tour of the Middle East. Now, it was actually really interesting because he had everything from, protests and big, host parties and things like that. But I guess one of the most interesting things to have come out of it is the apology which Israel issued to Turkey for what happened in terms of the Gaza Aid Flotilla and the atrocities that ensued. And it was actually interesting because Israel said that, the apology had been 3 years in the making, and Turkey was like, oh, it shows how genuine it was. But I guess with, good old Barack Obama, their older brother there, they must have, just made up. But I guess, even with Barack Obama being there was a lot of cynicism. A lot of questions were being asked in relation to the, intervention in Syria, whether there will be an intervention, whether there won't. So there was a lot of protest, especially when he did actually land in, the Palestine-Israel region and what ensued from there.
Yeah, I was reading an article about how Obama's popularity is at an all-time low in the Muslim world because when he first came in, you remember he made that historic address to the Muslim world, but now his public perception in the Muslim world has just completely plummeted. Now, again, in the US, well, not exactly in the US, but in US relations, North Korea has come out threatening war against South Korea and the United States, saying conditions for a simmering nuclear war had been created on the peninsula. So very tense situation there. They said that they will inform the UN Security Council of the latest situation as tensions continue to simmer. So this situation has been a long time in the coming. North Korea is increasingly isolated in the international sphere, and this could really take a turn for the worse if they are threatening nuclear war. So
they've actually, North Korea did come out and say from now on the North-South military communications will be cut off. And they have made some kind of very out there remarks. I mean, it's interesting to see how the political arena is taking it, because some commentators were just actually saying 2 days ago that this is just like a big kind of attention-seeking stunt by North Korea.
Yeah, you have to wonder if, their money is where their mouth is.
But I guess when you've got kind of threats of, nuclear and, large range artillery units and things like that, is it something that's worth, taking a risk on? So that's North and South Korea. In Mali, and speaking of the United Nations, the Secretary General of the United Nations has actually said he's proposing 11,200 strong peacekeeping force in Mali. He actually proposed this on Tuesday, and he is proposing that this peacekeeping force to actually work alongside the current forces to combat just stuck there today, to combat quote unquote counter-terrorism operations in the West African nation.
Yeah, I mean, interesting developments always in Mali after, as we know, a bit of background, the French invaded, well, I don't know if you want to call it invaded, the political language is laden with meaning, but the French came in to fight against what they called terrorist threats in Mali. And so this is the continuing presence of Western intervention in Mali.
And that's what most
people
have actually said, you know. When we speak about colonialism, we speak of the 19th century, but has colonialism really gone? Whether it be, you know, Mali and the French intervention there, whether it be, you know, the NATO intervention in Libya, or whether it be the current, you know, forces of the Americans and Australians in Afghanistan, in Iraq and other countries, is colonialism really over?
Yeah.
Just by a different name, I guess.
Definitely raises questions about the motives behind foreign intervention. Now, in a rather morbid story, a doctor is suspected of intentionally killing close to 300 patients to free up hospital beds in Brazil, which is a rather dire strategy. I mean, we always hear about hospitals being too full and hospitals not having enough beds, but this is frankly crazy. So this doctor was arrested for administering fatal doses of a muscle relaxant or cutting off patients' life support in 7 cases. But that number actually skyrocketed after investigators started noticing a similar pattern of deaths in the hospital. So apparently this doctor had been playing God and deciding which patients she would kill. Now, this is a really big complex here. I mean, you know, health professionals are of the most trusted in society. And you just think, if you can't trust a doctor in hospital, what profession is there left to trust? Because you're completely putting your life, literally, in the medical profession's hands when you're in a hospital.
Well, that's interesting because, I mean, depending on how this investigation goes, there was another case in which a doctor, where was he from again? He was British. Of British descent. Yeah, Harold Shipman. He actually reportedly killed between 215 and 260 people before he was convicted in 2000 of killing 15 patients. And after that, basically, you know, everything else came out. And he actually hanged himself in prison in 2004. So, I'd actually, you know, look at the trials and the convictions when that comes out.
Yeah, and in lighter news, we have a new German Twitter app, which is compiling a list of people that are about to be fired. And it has a very creative title, Fire Me. It tracks and displays people who say inappropriate things about their jobs on Twitter. Now, this is a huge concern because, as we know, nothing is really private anymore. Because before, you know, you could talk about your job, say whatever you wanted about your boss. But now, if something's online, if you post it on Facebook, you can assume that somebody's going to see it, and it may just get back to your employer who you really don't want to see something like that. So people have been caught out, you know, for example, taking sickies when they actually weren't sick and posting about it on Facebook. So
and the issue
just
is
a note to be
app,
careful.
It actually collates everything with your name, so your Twitter handle and the post. So I guess you know, employees have access to that too. So pretty scary stuff. If you're planning to complain about your boss, don't do that on Twitter. Now we're going to take a really, really short break. Then we're going to come back, and joining us all the way from Melbourne at the moment, I believe, is Sheikh Yahya Ibrahim, and he'll be chatting to us about the up and coming Twins of Faith conference, which is pretty exciting, we must say. So stay tuning in. You're listening to The Y Factor on 87.6 FM.
Ever been on the driving side and you're riding, you're looking through the glass, see your car on the side, the engine's broken and the car is smoking and the dude is shaking cause the heat is baking, or this cat's got a flat and the spare's all whack, no jack in the back and no clue where he's at, there ain't no real rush but you roll right by, not even asking the guy if he needs a supply, he might be alright and to pass ain't a sin, but within you feel bad in the state that he's in, how hard would it been just to ask you okay, that might be the deed that you need to succeed. That might be the deed that will so please Allah that you're forgiven the sin and you did when you was living. A small little thing that can cling and just ring and will bring the blessing from Allah who's the king. We pass on them deeds cause they seem all small, but they might be the deeds that's the best of them all. Mad when I see all these passes I took on these small little deeds I just overlook. I just can't believe small deeds that I overlook. Can you see little deeds that I overlook? And you read about it in my holy book.
Now, that was Small Deeds by Native Dean, a really beautiful song about the small deeds we often overlook. Now, we have some really, really exciting news. We actually have a conference coming up in Sydney this weekend known as the Twins of Faith Conference. And joining us on the telephone is Sheikh Yahya Ibrahim, who's a resident of Perth, but who will actually be attending both conferences in Melbourne and Sydney over the weekend. Sheikh Yahya, are you there?
Yes, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you, Sheikh?
Very well, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Now, just to get our caliber right, are you at the moment in Melbourne or you're in Perth?
No, I'm actually in the car in transit to the airport in Perth on the way to Melbourne now. So I'm parked at a red light, yes.
May Allah reward you, and I hope you don't commit any illegal actions by taking alcohol.
No, my brother-in-law is getting the good deed of driving me today.
Oh, alhamdulillah. Now, Sheikh, this is pretty exciting because I guess, often growing up in Sydney, we've seen the amazing conferences that they've put together in the US. We've seen what they've put together in Canada, and even Melbourne. And we've never had anything in Sydney, so it's pretty exciting. For those who don't know, can you just give us a brief rundown of what is the Twins of Faith Conference?
Twins of Faith is a really cool idea. Basically, our faith is built on ilm and amal, knowledge and action. And those are the twins of faith that are being alluded to in the title of the conference. We are seeking to encourage, the theme for this one is Islam Uncut, a look back into the past so that we could see where we're going into the future. And the topics that are being addressed range, from a study of the Quran and, the understanding of the statements of the Prophet in a contemporary approach. And these are all things that I think everyone is keen to delve into. I think one of the things that is of the greatest benefit to, I guess, Generation Y or the Y factor, as you might be asking, is how do I apply, teachings that were sent 1,400 years ago into a Facebook-enriched society?
Definitely,
and
Sheikh.
That's really our topic.
Yeah, and I'm having a look at some of the topics you've got on the program there, and they're actually really, really interesting. Things like a quest for a pure life, the glass half full, seek and you shall find, kiss, keep it short and simple. So these are things that you usually hear kind of in an everyday context, but to kind of bring it in that, I guess, Islamic context and to hear national and international renowned scholars talking about these issues is pretty wow.
Yeah, the Twins of Faith Conference is held in London, it's held in Kuala Lumpur, Melbourne, and now Sydney. In London, we get well over 10,000 people that will attend. It's a huge, huge, huge event. And I think it's something that Australia is ready for. I think we need to cut really some of the boundaries that hinder us from cooperating and working with one another and coming together, seeking the overall aim of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and showing the character of the Prophet ﷺ in our day-to-day action. And I think that the topics are really not beat-down topics. No one wants to come to be beat down and hear, I don't do this, I don't do this, I don't do this, I'm a terrible Muslim, okay, thank you, I'll see you again next year.
Actually, never attend an Islamic event.
Yeah, it's really more about building a personality of a person, and that our tawheed, our relationship with Allah, the one God, builds with us a character of that is fitting of that title of a muwahhid, one who submits to God and submits to the one God. So that's really the aim of the conference.
So it sounds like it's going to be really uplifting and inspiring, and the lineup of speakers is just amazing. But for our listeners who are going to be hearing you specifically, what are you going to be conveying? What message are you trying to get across?
Well, I have a number of topics. Some of them are about the personality of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some are about the Quran. If I was to ask your listeners, who's memorized Surah Wal-Adiyati Dabha, everyone basically would say, oh yeah, when I was young, I read that, I heard that, I've memorized that. It's what the Imam leads us in prayer. But if you were to ask that same person, what does it mean? They have absolutely no clue. And I'm talking about Arabs as well, not because I'm Lebanese or Masri, that I understand what Wal-Adiyati Dabha, Al-Muriyati Qadha mean. So there is a Quran that is not approached in a proper context by a vast majority of seemingly outwardly sincere and practicing faithful Muslims who consider themselves a religious crowd. And you ask them this simple question, you've memorized this surah for well over 20 years of your life. What does it mean? I have no idea. So there's a problem there. And I think that's something that really is part of the message that we want to get out. Connecting with the Quran, that elevation comes from revelation. And that's one of the topics that I address. I speak about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, about his personality, about how he conducted himself in his home and his life from an elemental perspective that can be applied in any ism, whether we're under a pluralist, democratic, capitalist society such as this wonderful country of Australia, or as Muslims have flourished in communist China for well over 1,000 years. So the essence of Islam in its pure, uncut form really is the message that we seek to push.
And Sheikh, I really like the title of Quest for Pure Life. What would you be addressing in that topic?
Look, tazkiyah and purifying oneself is the aim of every believer. And our tazkiyah to nafs, cleaning ourselves inwardly, out to show outwardly, is one of the most important processes that a believer indulges in and fulfills as an obligation of worship to Allah. So it's to learn the system of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ of thinking higher about the income that we earn. It's not, is my job halal or not, but do I do my job well enough that even the income that is a halal income, is it halal because I have fulfilled the duties that I'm asked? Am I a responsible father? How well can I perform my duties as a student, as an educator, as a mother, as a plumber? So it comes from a complete perspective of thinking about the world that we live in and seeking to purify ourselves and pursue excellence. And this concept of ihsan for us as Muslims is not one that's achieved and you just say, oh, I've made it to this level and that's good enough. It's a continuous pursuit of excellence until we return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So I think what we're getting at here is that this conference is really aiming for a holistic sort of approach, which I think is something which is missing from a lot of Islamic events, because you get, your spiritual boost and then you get your, dunya sort of aspects. But this sounds like it's really bringing the two together. So working on your spiritual state and also applying practical strategies to change, the way that you're doing things.
And how to be a kind of like a normal Muslim in society without, I guess, ostracizing people.
Exactly. Just being a normal person is sunnah. That's the sunnah. Just being yourself.
Sheikh,
and molding yourself to be to the way of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ.
Sheikh, if this is the primer, I'm really looking forward to the conference, inshallah, and I'm sure our listeners are. So this is Sheikh Yahya Ibrahim, and he's talking about the Twins of Faith conference. Now, that's going to be in Sydney on Sunday and Monday, so it's Easter weekend. You have no excuse not to attend, and it'll be at the Ian Turbot Auditorium at the University of Western Sydney in Parramatta. It's a full-day program. You've got Sunday, it starts from 2:15 p.m. and it goes all the way to 9:30, and on Monday it starts from 10:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. Now, Sheikh, if I could give you 15 seconds to tell our listeners why they must be there, go ahead.
Really, it's just to see people that you want to connect with on a level that is bringing you closer to Allah. My final advice is the words of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, لا تحقرن من المعروف شيئا. Don't look down on any good deed you do. This might be the good deed that puts you on a path towards Allah.
Sheikh, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, and inshallah we'll catch you at the Twins of Faith conference this weekend. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you, and we wish you inshallah you have a safe trip there.
Inshallah, I catch the flight.
inshallah. Thank you. We'll let you go. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. All right, so that was Sheikh Yahya Ibrahim, who benevolently actually took our call en route to the actual to the airport to actually catch his flight to Melbourne. So for those who didn't know, that was the Twins of Faith conference, inshallah, organised by Mercy Mission Australia. That would be this Sunday and Monday. And we actually have a free ticket to give away. So if you're listening to this, call us on 97583399. That was 97583399. Have a look at the program or the speakers and tell us either why you want to see a particular speaker and why, or why you really want to hear about a particular subject and why. And those who get in first and have the best response, we've got a ticket to give away. So that was 97583399. Now we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned, because we're going to come back inshallah and chat with Mehal about the
Femen protests in Tunisia, which is a very hot topic at the moment.
That's right. So you're listening to the Y Factor on 87.6 FM.
What we need is love. As we sail across the sea of life, so much pain, worrying divides. It's a shame we don't see how it can be. Oh, we need to smile at each other, wish for your brother, help one another. All we need is love. Oh, we need to honor our mother, shelter our sisters, all to existence. God's help will come from above. But first we need the love. All the games people playing now, feel the flames. Hatred devours, let's spark a change that's within all of us. Oh, we need to smile at each other, reach for your brother, help one another. All we need.
You're listening to the Y Factor on 87.6 FM. We just chatted to Sheikh Yahya Ibrahim in relation to the Twins of Faith conference. As we mentioned, we've got a ticket to give away, a free ticket to the conference this weekend. If you're interested in winning the ticket, you need to ring us on 9758 3399 and tell us why you really want to see one of the speakers and why, or why you really want to hear about a certain topic and why. So our number was 9758 3399. This is a live program, so make sure you tune in. Now, up next we have
all-round superstar, PhD student, academic and Wonder Woman Mehal Krayem joining us today. Welcome, Mehal.
Thanks for having me. You guys make me sound much better than I actually am. Thanks.
Oh, no, Mehal, you're just modest.
Not at all.
Well, Mehal is no stranger to the Y Factor, if you guys have been listening, but she is a very welcome guest to discuss today, and we have a really topical thing to discuss with her. If you've been paying attention to the Femen movement, they've been conducting protests recently in Tunisia. Now, Femen are advocating for, well, you might guess from the title, for feminist change, and they do have some pretty out there strategies to advocate for this. So, Mehal, just to start off, what is your understanding of Femen's aims?
As far as I understand it, it's basically about women reclaiming their bodies, and part of the movement is them using their bodies as a form of protest, which often means being naked and writing, so the kinds of messages you might have on a placard during a protest, these women would write on their body.
And this comes from that movement to kind of, I guess, reclaim. And we've been seeing that, I guess, in not just when it comes to feminism and women's movements, but even, for example, minority groups, whether they be, for example, Black Americans or others, kind of reclaiming words that were used in a derogatory context against them to reclaim it and give themselves that sense of empowerment. So I guess this is the paradigm we're operating in. But the issue here is when the 19-year-old, and her name is Amina, we don't know her last name, went topless and wrote on her chest, what did she write? She goes, "My body is mine, it's nobody's honor." In another one, she also wrote, "F your morals." Now, this isn't new. In 2011, we had Alia El-Mahdi, who was an Egyptian protester, go completely nude, and she was also protesting the Morsi regime, and she had, the Quran is not a constitution and things like that across her body. Now, Mehal, what we want to chat about is this interesting phenomenon of this feminine tactic being adopted in Middle Eastern countries. Now, there was a really interesting article by Ruby Hamad on Daily Life. She was saying the Western movement to kind of reclaim their body and go naked actually stems from the fact that in Western society, women's body are exploited, whether it be for the fashion industry, for political industry, for advertising, for anything you see a naked woman's body. And women are sick of that, so they want to reclaim that. Whereas in the Muslim world, generally you have the opposite effect where women's body are hidden. So it is kind of objectified in a sense, but it's still hidden. So is kind of going topless the right mechanism to use if you are trying to bring attention to really, really serious issues of, you know, women's empowerment, women's, liberation, and women issues that these people face in their societies?
I actually tend to agree with a lot of what Ruby wrote in the Daily Life article, and that is I don't necessarily think it's a very effective form of protest in the Middle East. Obvious, and I mean, I think it's problematic enough as it is in the West, where people are used to seeing more of women's bodies. But I think in the Middle East, what it does, unfortunately, is alienate the cause and alienate the person. And whilst they might have some very legitimate concerns, by doing that in a society that is socially, religiously conservative, I don't know, I don't actually think it's doing very much to advance the concerns of women, particularly given there are legitimate concerns. I mean, we are seeing women's rights abuses in the Middle East. We're seeing it all around the world. It's not just something that's specific to the Middle East.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I don't think that, nudity
is
in
the
that
best form.
context.
I guess the interesting thing is Amina herself has actually been confined to a psychiatric institution. Her auntie came out and released a video, and she said, look, we're from an educated, open-minded family, and her father's been crying, you know, all day long, and she's been put to the psychiatric institution. Alia, the Egyptian protester, has actually gone to Paris, and she's been in exile since 2011. So it comes back to your point about, is this the most effective strategy, and do these women who might have legitimate concerns, I guess, kind of become martyr for causes that aren't really stable causes?
Yeah, I think my fear, and obviously, I mean, I haven't followed the story from the very beginning, so I'm not really sure. Maybe she has some very serious personal concerns. I'm not entirely sure what the issue is with Amina. But my concern is, are you fighting your battle? Because the issues that are relevant to women in the Middle East are very specific, and they're not necessarily the same issues that women in the West are facing. And this particular movement is something that might be advancing the causes of women in the West at the expense of hindering, the causes of the women in the Middle East. And I think, unfortunately, what happens to these women is they do end up being alienated. And I feel bad for them on that level, because I think you might have had something really legitimate, and you might have been a fantastic person to go out there and really lobby for these things. But what happens once these women end up in exile? You know, they can't return to their families. You know, there's a whole lot of social issues kind of around that as well. And in Egypt as well, when what was her name, Alia, did the protesting, there were lots of movements and groups that were originally in support of her who came out and distanced themselves from that movement because they didn't want to undermine what they were fighting for. And I think that's a very important point as well. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you go about it, but I don't necessarily think that that's the most effective form of protest.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really interesting because I was reading, there were so many comments on Ruby's article in Daily Life, and the majority of them were actually saying, you know, things like, oh, it's their body, people can do what they want with it. And I just found it, like, really interesting to compare that sort of, you know, like, your body, your choice type of attitude, compared to a lot of the breastfeeding debates which have come out, where you had the exact opposite being said. You know, women are being inconsiderate, you know, just put it away, you can easily do it somewhere else, you know, don't offend other people's sensibilities. And it's just, I found it so interesting about how in this context people are all for, you know, expose yourself, it's your choice.
And not just that, but I guess it also brings it back to the fact that, you know, morality or issues of morals isn't something that Muslims have a monopoly on, right? All societies, all cultures have their morals and have their, you know, rights and wrongs. And I think this is somewhat of, I guess, an Orientalist take on things, right? But you've got kind of, you know, Western audiences, and Richard Dawkins started this, you know, campaign. They want to have, you know, a Bare Your Breasts Day for Amina in support of Amina. You have these movements in the West supporting these, you know, I guess, oppressed women in the Middle East. And I'm not saying that, you know, women in the Middle East are necessarily generally, you know, liberated and enlightened. However, in our own societies, we have these very issues and these very debates. So I think we need to stop kind of having these specs on when we look at the Middle East is why do they want morality, why do they want morals? But then in our own society, we can't even allow women to breastfeed. And when they do, we have issues about it. And, you know, we have constraints. So I guess it's that dichotomy between the way, you know, the West perceives issues in their own countries and also in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, there are two sorts of issues at play here, and the one is that we tend to, particularly when women's rights abuses happen in the Middle East, we tend to fight sexism with racism, and that's really unproductive because that's two battles that we're fighting already. Do we really need to, compound them is the one thing. But the other thing is we're very quick, all societies are very quick to judge other societies but not look inwardly in the same way that people, human beings, individuals, look to other people to see what they're doing wrong before they look at themselves often. As societies we do that, and I think in Australia particularly we adopt we're not as bad as insert country, therefore it's good enough. Yep. And I think with that debate about breastfeeding, I think that's so fascinating, but I think it essentially comes down to the fact, can you fetishize breastfeeding in a sense? And you can't. It kind of is the thing that
but I guess it's not about aesthetics. It's about you're saying women can do whatever they like and morals are repugnant and there's something of the 19th century, right? So whether we have these values in our own society or in another society, I guess the premise is stop thinking that societies can exist in a vacuum without morals and without, I guess, beliefs and constraints. And it's interesting because Germaine Gree wrote an article on this, and she's, one of the, I guess, matriarchs of the feminist movement. She came out and said, even feminist tactics in themselves, are they really productive, or are they kind of creating this monster? And what, Germaine Gree was saying, even when you're actually looking at the debate within the women's movement itself, all of Femen's models are kind of, really skinny. She said not even a stretch mark to be visible and things like that. If you're really trying to reclaim, how come you don't, you're still kind of conveying to that very stereotypical image of what a woman needs to look like, right? And another thing that Ruby did mention in her article, again criticising Femen's stance, is at the end of the day, who got anything out of Amina's plight? It was Femen, so they've got kind of international notoriety. And Amina herself, after she's disappeared, when they actually asked the founder of Femen what she's done about it, she said the only question for us is, when are we going to take Femen to Tunisia? And that was her response, right? So it's actually really interesting to see this kind of, movement that advocates for women's rights, their strategies, and how that fits with, really well-grounded movements that have existed for, ages, really trying to do some groundwork to further women's causes, and then you get these outrageous kind of stunts that overshadow them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I think at the end of the day, it's almost like these women are kind of political pawns. At the end of the day, Amina, she's in a psychiatric ward. Who's there to help her realistically? Well, no one from the Femen movement.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, like, Femen's methods can risk being a bit farcical, because I was watching a program on Al Jazeera, actually, and they had a representative from Femen, and even though obviously it was live, it wasn't planned, but they knew the exact moment that the Femen person was going to lift their top up, because it's just become so predictable, and so it becomes almost like a joke, their method.
And the camera actually panned away from her.
Yeah, the camera panned away because they were just expecting Femen to do that at some point.
I didn't see that interview, but that's really sad. Yeah. Look, I just think it's unfortunate that women's issues still come back to our bodies. And I think part of the whole thing is that we want to be more than our bodies. And the reason that the breastfeeding issue is such a big thing is because we start to look at women's bodies as functional in a sense, right? Like, we're starting to see it as the women breastfeed, that's a function that they're serving. And I think, we can't, well, I guess people can objectify that, but it's not as objectified. It's not as sexual. And really, I would like to think that the feminist movement can move beyond that. Can move beyond looking at women purely for their bodies in whichever way they're being used. I mean, I personally don't think it's a very effective form of protest, but each to their own. At the end of the day, I don't know, what do you do?
And it's interesting because I guess it's that double-edged sword. I mean, society wants to see nakedness. That's what you're giving them.
Yeah, I mean, we're playing again into that paradigm which the male gaze has set for us.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the dangers of it. And especially somewhere like the Middle East, regardless of how, even in the most liberal Middle Eastern countries, to use the word liberal loosely, I think, I don't know, do you really want to be going around protesting in that way? Aren't there more effective, more productive ways that we can go about it, where things actually get done rather than just simply media attention? So, I mean, you absolutely need the media attention to promote your cause, but it doesn't need to be in that way. I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, and I guess I'd find it really hard if I was a women's movement in the Middle Eastern countries who's done, 20, 30 years of hard work trying to get things like, women's education, women's rights and things like that. Then you've got these outrageous stunts, and then at the end of the day, people are perceiving you negatively and brushing you with the same stroke. So whoever says the words kind of, for example, women empowerment or women education, they get painted, do you want to go topless? And do you want us to admit you to a psychiatric institution? Yeah. So I guess it's really sad, and it's I guess something's definitely interesting to keep our eye on the updates. So Mehal, you've bedazzled us once again with your insights.
Thank you for having me. You guys are actually more insightful than I was.
Thank you. It's been our pleasure. We're going to take a short break. Thank you so much, Mehal, for joining us. You've got me so bedazzled, I can't even talk straight on air.
Thanks, Mehal. I'll keep listening to the rest of the program.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. So that was Mehal, and she was having a chat to us about the very interesting topic of the Femen movement. Now we're going to take a very short break, and we're going to come back to chat about the Sydney Uni protest. So for whoever was at Sydney Uni or whoever's Sydney Uni student, this would be something to keep an eye out for. Also, we still have that ticket to give away. So call us and tell us who is your favourite speaker from the Twins of Faith conference and what is your favourite topic, and we can give you a free ticket to the Twins of Faith. You're listening to The Y Factor on 87.6 FM.
It's special. There's no one just like you. Created by the Master, Allah created you. You are very special, exclusively designed. You are very special, and I'm so glad you're mine. You were made by Allah. He fashioned your heart. You were made by Allah. He knew you from the start. You were made by Allah. Unique in all your ways. You were made by Allah, to praise Him all your days. Bright little eyes He gave you to help you find your way. May Allah grant them wisdom to see you through each day. You are very special. There's only one of you. You are very special, and remember I love you. You were made by Allah. He fashioned your heart. You were made by Allah. He knew you from the start. You were made by Allah. Unique in all your ways. You were made by Allah, to praise Him all your days.
Welcome back to the Y Factor on 87.6 FM. Joining us all the way from Melbourne, I believe, is Alma. Welcome to the show, Alma.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And we've also got in the studio with us Wassim Rachwani. Welcome to the show, Wassim.
Thank you.
Now, we're here to chat about the very exciting developments that have been occurring at Sydney Uni. For those who've been living under a rock, there were protests earlier this week at Sydney Uni. There was around 4 or 5 arrests, and there's been a lot of tensions in the school. So, Alma, can you just give us a brief rundown of what actually occurred for those who aren't aware?
Okay, so I think the most important thing is that the Tuesday and Wednesday, we
the staff at the university actually took industrial action. It was something that was in response to the Vice-Chancellor and senior management offering a very, very poor enterprise bargaining agreement, which basically takes away hard-won conditions that general and academic staff have fought for a long time. So the two strike days were the basis of the protests. The students, who were very grateful for their solidarity, organized a roaming picket. So basically, Wassim can talk more about that, but yeah, they went around different lecture theatres, basically getting students to come out and support the staff. But it's part of our industrial campaign for a new enterprise agreement.
Okay, so Wassim, tell us, what is a roaming picket? It sounds really fancy.
Well, basically, the definition of a picket itself is just the blockage of any certain area. So we were blocking all the uni entrances, and we thought we'd be more effective if we'd go around to other lecture rooms that were not on strike and kind of tell them, we're holding a strike, this is against the NTU protocols, and we'd like to tell you we'd like to, kind of get you more aware of the situation. And what it involved is just about 60 or 70 students, quite a lot, would enter the lecture theatre, and we'd ask for an announcement, and it was a bit loud, with a few chants in that, but nothing too disruptive.
Well, I'm just reading here that apparently a group of protesters were chanting and playing drums in a chemistry lecture. So I think some people would argue that was quite disruptive.
Yeah.
So Wassim, what was one of the chants?
What's one of the chants?
You and Alma can say it together if it makes a good duo.
Let me remember.
There's plenty of chants. No ifs, no buts, no education cuts.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a catchy one.
And I think no one in, no one out, shut the uni down.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Alma, can we just take it back a step? So an enterprise agreement, in practical terms, what does that actually mean? I guess a lot of people have heard about kind of concerns and issues, but in practical terms, what were you guys actually protesting about?
Okay, so in practical terms, what we're protesting about, or what we're actually taking industrial action around, is, well, first and foremost, the ability of the NTU, which is the main education union in Australia, the National Tertiary Education Union. So we're fighting for the ability of the NTU to represent staff on campus. This is important because Sydney University staff have not faced this level of anti-union rhetoric or anti-union kind of agenda from management before. So what they're proposing is to remove the NTU from the collective agreement, and basically make it harder for the union to represent staff on a whole series of issues. So, for example, if the university wants to go through a restructure and, carry out redundancies, or they want to increase workloads, or they want to, change people's job descriptions, make staff do more work for less pay. Well, the NTU is the union that fights against this kind of stuff. And in this round of negotiation, the management are trying to weaken the NTU's ability to do that by removing them from the agreement. So that's one of the key things. Another one is in terms of academic staff. At the moment, we have a 40-40-20 formula. So 40% of time is supposed to be spent on research, 40% on teaching, and 20% on administration. And this formula basically protects academic staff from, although it doesn't always work, but from basically having an unbalanced, job description, or it ensures that academic staff have the time allocated to do both good quality research and good quality teaching. Now, management are proposing to remove this, which means that they could force staff to do, for example, 80% of research, or 80% of teaching, or even 80% administration. And this poses a problem in terms of people's workloads, in terms of, career development, etc. So those are a couple of things that are happening.
Yeah. Now, Alma, that was in relation to, I guess, for staff specifically. Wassim, I want to ask you, as a current third-year student yourself, this is something that sounds to me like it's affecting the tutors and the lecturers. Why did you decide to take action and, I guess, join in the protests?
Well, basically, personally, as a student, I'm not one to kind of, be a bystander of any inequality or unfairness. So if any of this type of happens, and also the fact that I know a lot of these people involved here and I know the hardships that they've been through or are currently undergoing. So basically, I can't, I'm not the type of person to stand around while this is happening. So I'm always in solidarity with all their causes.
And practically for you as a student, do you feel like these tensions that the staff are undergoing is in some way affecting your learning and your education?
Yes.
Well, it's a trickle effect. I mean, if the quality of teaching decreases, that's obviously going to trickle down to the quality of education that the students are receiving.
Exactly, yeah. So, so in the end, all these kinds of, kind of negative agreements and cuts on or workload rather, is obviously going to affect the students through the tutors. So, yeah.
Now, Alma, in terms of the staff who participated in this, do you feel like they think that what happened over last week actually had a beneficial effect, or do you think that the negative media coverage in terms of the arrests and the like has actually overshadowed any positive progress you guys might have had to date?
Yeah. Well, I think actually the campaign so far is going forward and has made gains, and I think that the last 2 days at Sydney University have really exposed what this Vice-Chancellor and what this management are actually about. I've been a student at Sydney University in the past, and that's how I started being an activist, and I've never seen so many riot police called onto campus. Police are actually not allowed to be on campus unless they're invited by management. So for them to invite riot police in huge numbers to basically break a picket line and arrest students who have a democratic right to protest actually shows how little they care about student rights and the ability of people to defend themselves, not to mention even staff rights. Yeah. So I actually think that the developments in the last 2 days and in the last 3 weeks, because we've had 2 strikes now, have actually been really positive for our campaign. If I could just go back to what Wassim was talking about before, because I think that it's incredibly important for students to show support and solidarity with the staff at the moment, because although the strikes are about our collective agreement, they have a direct impact on students. One example is in the university sector, 40% of teaching, especially at Sydney University, is done by casuals. Now, this means that basically students are not given the ability to, if your lecturer is employed on a casual contract, that means they're not available all the time. They're not able to invest the same amount of time and energy in producing the teaching material that you need, in producing good quality assessments, and then they're also not able to devote the time necessary to provide you, with the one-on-one tutoring that you may need. And this is a major claim of our campaign. We want the university to actually provide long-term contracts for staff that have been there who are employed to teach. We want them to have the same rights as permanent staff.
Alma, thank you for that. I think that's a really good explanation in terms of how it might affect current and future students. Now, Wassim, just to wrap it up, you physically were involved in the protest and you're probably aware of others who might have been kind of in the heat of things arrested or otherwise. What's the process on that? Have charges been laid? Are there court cases pending, or have they just kind of forgotten about it and are getting disciplinary punishment through the school? The uni.
Firstly, the arrests themselves are quite ridiculous. To start off, for a few, say, just for voicing your opinion on these unfair establishments, we get arrested, or for just showing our strength I mean, it's clear that the police are trying to intimidate us into not voicing our opinion. And
Wassim, sorry to cut you off. Do you think it was a tactical decision that was made incorrectly to go into a chemistry, room to protest? You should have went to the arts department. They would have been like, these are enlightenment,
well, it's funny
revolutionary ideals. We're here to, protect you. So, do you think that might have been the mistake there?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't perfect. The roaming picket, I guess, but I guess I wasn't the one who made the decisions on that, really.
Yeah, but it's funny because it's actually, I've been following it on Facebook, just comments from USYD students, and a lot of them have actually been quite negative about this whole protest, saying, this is disruptive to our learning, this isn't the right way to go about it. Even if I supported what the protesters are trying to achieve, this has now completely alienated me. So it's just really interesting to see how the strategy could possibly have backfired.
It's just that, in terms of the disruption, that mostly included the roaming picket and the guys who were banging on drums. And I'm not saying I condone that type of behavior for a cause, really, because I don't think either was the most, effective way to voice opinion. But then again, we can't control everyone that are involved in our cause. So the main way, obviously, we want to voice is through the picket. And just striking, basically.
Wassim, thanks for that. Now, Alma, just before we wrap up, if someone does want to keep up to date with what's happening or kind of, read more about this, where should they go?
The best place to go is the National Tertiary Education Union website, so ntu.org.au, and just click on the Sydney University link. So that's basically the source of truth in this campaign. There's a lot of propaganda going around from management and from, right-wing students who don't support the campaign, who have no clue what the campaign is actually about. So I think that the NTU's website is the best place to get information about it.
That's right.
And actually, there's also, sorry to interrupt, there's also a student-specific website on Facebook, Sydney University Education Action Group, who have been basically the leading activists from the student side as well.
Excellent. Yep. Now, I can see Wassim kind of profusely nodding to this. This is a call out to any of the listeners. If you do have money laying around and you want to bail these poor students out when they do get arrested, you're welcome to do that. Now, Wassim, just to wrap it up, what would your message be to kind of, current students or future students at the University of Sydney in relation to, your message about why you participated in this and the cause that you're participating in?
The students in general, or just the ones who participated?
Well, I guess the students in general, because the participating students are with the
part
cause
of the student body.
That's right. Yeah. But those who haven't participated or those who might have a negative perception, what would you like to say to them?
Well, basically, if you, for students in general, if you want to, have a say in something that can change your student life for the better, and can take your education, and I'm sure you do, it's by all means look up all the information you need. It's all there, and we happily want, would love you to come support our cause in the next strikes or pickets that we're going to hold in the future.
Okay, Alma, thank you so much for joining us. I know, you really made some time to join us, so we really do highly appreciate that. And Wassim, thank you so much for coming in. It's been our pleasure. Thanks to both of you.
No. Thank you.
All right. Now, listeners, we're going to leave it there. That was in relation to the Sydney Uni protest. Just Google it. It should come up. And I guess, you've got both sides of the story. So that's what we were aiming to do with this feature. Now, we're going to just wrap up by telling you just again a recap in relation to the events that we've got on. But we were actually going to do some
so we spoke to Sheikh Yahya Ibrahim before about the amazing Twins of Faith conference, which is on this Sunday and Monday, Easter long weekend. So you have no excuses not to attend, and that's happening at UWS Parramatta this weekend.
That's right. Now, you can actually buy your tickets online at au.twinsoffaith.com. au.twinsoffaith.com, and they've actually got the program, and it's 2 full days, as we mentioned. Now, our ticket giveaway is still there. Now, I think it was just because the lines were occupied by the people calling in our...
That's right. I'm sure the lines would have been flooded otherwise.
So what we'll do is we're going to take that to the Facebook page. So inshallah, the ticket will go on the Facebook page, and just keep up to date with us. And if you want to win that ticket, and our Facebook page is Y Factor, the Y Factor Radio Show 87.6 FM. So that's the Twins of Faith conference. Now, on the Facebook page, we've also been having a chat about Napoleon, Life of an Outlaw. Now, the Islamic Museum of Australia have actually brought him out, and he's got 2 shows. One's in Sydney, one's in Melbourne. and he's actually speaking about, you know, his life, and the catchline is when rags to riches isn't enough. So if you want to know what changed kind of the life of the former outlaw member to becoming a practicing Muslim, make sure you attend. The details for the Sydney tour are as follows. It'll be Saturday night, so that's Saturday the 30th of March at 6:30 p.m. at the Powerhouse Museum. So Saturday the 30th of March, 6:30 p.m. at the Powerhouse Museum. You can visit the Islamic Museum of Australia website to get your details. And we also have 2 ticket giveaways for that. Now, we didn't announce it on air because there is a competition on the Y Factor group page. So if you do want to win 2 free tickets to the screening of Life of an Outlaw with Napoleon, make sure you get on the page, and whoever wants to buy tickets, as I said, visit the Islamic Museum of Australia site, and that's this Saturday at 6:30 p.m. at the Powerhouse Museum. Now, I think we've just about exhausted everything we had planned for this week. What do you think, Zeynab?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that was just a really vast array of topics we covered, from international news to local news. So hope you guys enjoyed the program.
That's right. Now, as usual, we're happy for feedback and for any suggestions or any questions, or I guess anything in relation to future episodes. If you are interested, you can touch base with us at yfactor@live.com.au. So that's yfactor@live.com.au. And that is our email. We're also on Twitter at YFactorRadio, so Twitter at YFactorRadio, and we've actually recently joined Instagram, and we're being Instagramming pictures from the studio. So if you want to see what Wassim really looks like in real life, you can get on Instagram. We've been
sounds a bit creepy, Tasnim.
It does, hey, but we've been putting pictures of our guests if you kind of want to see the action behind the scenes. So with that, we'll leave it. You're listening to the Y Factor on 87.6 FM. Thank you so much for joining us on this show. This is Tasnim
and Zeynab,
and we'll leave it there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.